It took a long time to get here and a long time to read, but guys, the first arc of the Stormlight Archive is complete. It's time to talk about it. Hey, what's up, bookworms and Knights Radiant? We are back at last to dip back into the ℚ𝕦𝕣𝕚𝕤, guys, with the conclusion of the first arc of the Stormlight Archive. This is for Wind and Truth. Book number 5 in the Stormlight Archive. Been 4 years since we talked about Rhythm of War on this channel, and I think that it was one of those things where I was very, very lukewarm on Rhythm of War, so I wasn't quite sure how it's going to go. Loved the first 3 books. 4 was a big, big curveball that I wasn't quite sure if that's the new direction. I don't know where I'm going to fall on this. So with this one, guys, the question comes down to, was it worth the wait? In many regards, yes. And some things, it's a little bit more of a mixed bag. And we're going to kind of talk about those today as that goes along. But let's begin like usual, guys. Let's talk about what is this book about. That's a heavy book, isn't it? So ℚ𝕤𝕠𝕠𝕜𝕤 has challenged the evil god odium to a contest of champions with the future of Roshar on the line. The Knights Radiant have only 10 days to prepare, and the sudden ascension of the crafty and ruthless ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕤 has thrown everything into disarray. Desperate fighting continues simultaneously worldwide. Adolin and Asmir, Sigil and Vinley at the Shattered Plains, and Yasna at the ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕤 City. The former assassin Szeth must cleanse his homeland of ℚ𝕤𝕤𝕤 from the dark influence of the ℚ𝕤𝕤𝕤. He is accompanied by Kaladin, who faces a new battle of helping Szeth fight his own demons. At the same time, Shallan, Renarin, and R'hllane work to unravel the mystery behind the ℚ𝕤𝕤𝕤 and their involvement in the enslavement of the Singer race and the ancient Knight Radiants, killing their ℚspren. As Dalinar and Navani seek an edge against Odium's champion that can be found only in the spiritual realm, where memory and possibility combine in chaos, the fate of the entire ℚ𝕤𝕤𝕤 hangs in the balance. Guys, takes us all the way to the final book of the first arc of Stormlight Archive. This is Wind and Truth, and look, I was very, very excited, just like most of the fantasy community was. What we're going to kind of do here, guys, is talk about what I liked, what I didn't really like, and basically, why you should read it and kind of where I stand on the ℚ𝕤𝕤𝕤 going forward. It's going to be spoiler-free. If you haven't read the book yet, you're safe. There will be some things. If you haven't read any of the books in the series, I'm going to mention names of people that are still alive. So if that matters to you, you might want to bookmark this and come back after you do catch up. But as for Wind and Truth, this will be very spoiler-free, and I think you will be safe. So what did I like? Gotta say, Adolin Kholin became my favorite character in the series in this book. I've always loved Adolin. I thought that Adolin was a top 5 character in the story for me, but he was never really close to challenging his dad for my #1 character series. I think he does it in this book. He was very much the MVP of it. I think the best action in this book does take place in his storyline, but the twists and turns that this character takes in the series, it's amazing. You think about where he started, where he ends this book, completely different character. I mean, there's things that happen in this book that will change that character forever. And I was a big fan of the evolution of that character, as well as the evolution of the relationship between him and his ℚ𝕤𝕤𝕤. I think that that's a really interesting concept that Sanderson has been playing around with here. There apparently are people who ship those two characters. I had no idea that was a thing, but apparently that is a thing. But yeah, it's a really, really great storyline for Adolin, this one. He really, really showed out. And at first I was like, I don't know how I feel about Adolin kind of being isolated from the rest of the cast, the main cast, but he had some really great moments in this book, and I was very, very happy to see where he did go in it, even if some things were just me biting my nails for this character's fate the whole book. But I mean, that's good. That means you care about the character, right? I gotta say that the Kaladin and Szeth team up is pretty fun. Kind of their Riggs and Murtaugh. One guy's just kind of broken, the other guy, I would say he's like kind of close to retirement, so it's not quite like, that's Lethal Weapon for you youngsters if you don't know. Check it out. But Kaladin's trying to get this guy to screw his head back on straight. It's kind of the I'm not really thrilled about that. Look, I like Kaladin as a badass. Him basically becoming like fantasy therapist is exactly the role that I was going to kind of hope for him. But it was kind of led you to believe that when you read Rhythm of War, this is the way the character was going. And he does that role well, and you understand with the condition that Kaladin is in, maybe the battlefield's not the best idea for him. Now, I'm not going to tell you where he ends this book, but I think it's a pretty satisfying arc for Kaladin. I was pretty happy with it. A lot of the things that were on my wish list, we did get to see. But knowing the history between these two characters, and now they're having to work together, I love it when either enemies have to first to work together, or former enemies or adversaries have to work together. It's always a lot of fun to play with. But the big thing was that this was going to be Szeth's flashback book, and that was a huge step up, guys, from Vinley's in book 4. Really good. I was pretty happy with it. It was pretty grim and cruel, as you would expect the life that this guy has led to get him to where he is in that prologue of the first book, But I think that there were some moments that were just like heartbreaking. Some of the stuff, like I'll just say the stuff with the doll was there's not really a dry eye in the house. That was really well written, and I was really just feeling the pain that the character was there. So it was incredibly well done. And I'm pretty satisfied with it. So where kind of his flashbacks kind of catch up to where the story is. We know Zeth. Middling returns on it, but overall, I did really enjoy the flashbacks in this book. It's just like I did in books 1, 2, and 3. Not so much in book 4, as we've talked about. But I'm not going to drag this book because of things that happened in book 4. I would say that I felt like it was back to what we've come to expect of those flashbacks. Very much well-paced. I was surprised that it was like page 300 before we got the first Zeth flashback. But then I felt like it was well-paced where it does the lost formula, where, he's showing the flashback with what's going on in real time, and he gets to a point where they merge at the perfect moment. And I think that really did work out well here. So I was very happy with that. The plot twist in this book really kind of lies on who's Odium's champion is. We all have had our speculation for years, and believe it or not, someone I know actually got this right. I was actually rather surprised when I saw that was the way it was going. Now, to be honest with you, it kind of lost some of its weight because someone ruined this for me on Instagram. If the book had been out for maybe 36 hours, and someone just wrote the word spoiler and then told me who his champion was. I was very upset about it. I was hoping that they were just kind of joshing me a little bit, but no, it turned out to be true. It's still handled really well, and it's very effective. I wish I hadn't been spoiled on that. It's like a 1,300-page book, guys. Don't be spoiling the ending on day 2 of the release. It's really rough. But my fault for reading that, I guess. But I really liked what they did with this plot twist. It made me think of the show Angel, which is a spinoff of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's kind of something similar that Joss Whedon did with a storyline with that character in there and playing with a little bit of well, you'll see. You'll see if you've read the book. If you know, you know. But it was something that I thought was really well done, and it made me think of that. One of my favorite actual storylines and arcs in the series Angel. It was really well done. I mean, kind of how I feel about the fight. We'll get there in a little bit, but yeah, it was really handled pretty well, and it was an interesting plot twist the way that it did happen. So I think it was one of those where I kind of did see it coming, but I don't know if it's because I was spoiled that I saw it coming. So I don't know if I would have figured this out, before it happened, but it was really cool. It was really cool to see, as was Shallan's resolution with the Ghost Bloods. Now, this is something that's been going on since Words of Radiance, I believe, and I kind of felt like ever since Oathbringer, I feel like it's kind of been spinning its wheels a little bit. Well, we finally get a good resolution of that, and I was pretty satisfied with it. And one of the big complaints about Shallan was like too many personalities. Come on, let's reel it back. He does ease off of it; they're still there, but I think Sanderson does ease off of it a little bit and give us a little bit more focus of a Shallan story. It's really tough for me to see her separated from most of the main cast, the same book, same like Adolin. But maybe that's just because I wanted. I mean, Adolin and Shallan. But it's just one of those things where I wasn't sure how I felt about that. But it's a decent storyline, and it has a satisfying conclusion to the whole Ghost Bloods arc, and I was pretty happy with that. And I was happy with a lot less Lift and a lot less Vinley. I'm not going to apologize. I know that this is like a hot button issue for everyone because I posted a meme just joking about Lift, and I just get lit up all the time. I don't like Lift, and I don't feel bad about it. And you can still like her if I don't. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. You guys have won. She's going to be leading the next arc of Stormlight Archive books. So you guys won. I lost. So there you go. And Vinley I never really gave a damn about this character whatsoever. I don't have like white hot hatred or nothing like that. I just don't care. So I was glad that she had a lot less page count in this one. And the moments that she has, fine. They're fine. There's nothing that really just makes me want to flip tables or flip the book because it's as big as a table, But I think that Sanderson continues to write damaged characters really well. I've seen a lot of people start to complain about this, that they feel like he's checking off boxes or whatever. And I can understand that complaint. I can. But I feel like there's some things that he writes as someone who suffered with depression, as someone who has a special needs kid. There's things like that he writes. I'm like, that's very well done. You can tell he did his research on this. And I'm happy he isn't shying away from that. He wants to continue to write damaged characters, and to me, I call those real people, because there's no perfect human being out there, especially on Roshar, so I like that he writes those imperfections about his characters, and I think he continues to do that really well, and I'm not gonna give him a mark against him for continuing to grow on that, and I also think that he did a good job of, not letting those characters where they had overcome some things, and I felt like Rhythm of War, they stepped back a little bit. I don't feel like he did that this time. He really if they've kind of gotten past some issues, they're kind of moving forward now instead of just being in an endless hell loop. And I love that. I do respect that because I was really worried that that was just what he was going to do for the whole series, and I didn't like that. But I do love that this whole book seems like a ticking clock. You know, they've got 10 days until this Contest of Champions. I love a ticking clock plotline because it keeps everything from feeling, so it makes it feel like there's a sense of urgency. And you feel that even when you feel like the book is kind of slow, you can feel the anticipation of these characters knowing we are racing the clock here. We need to get things rolling. And I love that. I appreciate that. And the 10-day format was a lot better than just part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. Having 10 days was a really neat idea, and I think it really did help add to that ticking clock format that's just really, really well done. And I got to say, just like a satisfying conclusion, I think, for most of the legacy characters. Now, the legacy characters that were set up in books 1 and 2. You know, Adolin, Shallan, Dalinar, Navani, all these characters from the first couple books, Kaladin, I feel like they all have satisfying arcs where if they're going to be taking a back seat in the second arc of this series, I understand. I feel like for the most part, it's pretty satisfying. I love the characters, so I don't want to see them just disappear. But, you know, if they've got to take a back seat for Star Trek The Next Generation, I mean, okay, I get that. I get that he's trying to do that. He's trying to grow his world here, and there's going to be some time that goes by between the next couple books. But I feel like where most of our legacy characters end here, you'll be mostly satisfied with the storyline he does give them, regardless of their fate. Let's talk about what I didn't like here, and know that this is personal gripes. These aren't necessarily things that I would say is necessarily bad. Some things maybe you want to look out for as well. If these are things that concern you, and the thing is maybe something you should look into before you decide to read the book. I thought the pacing was just terrible, and let me explain. Brandon Sanderson is one of the greatest writers in fantasy. I will not contest that. He is excellent at what he does. What I can't stand is we all talk about the Sanderlanche, right? Because we know how he does the third act of his books are just frantic and incredible. He's really, really good at it. My problem is you look at a book this long and you say, look, for 700 pages, this guy can write just straight fire. So why do the first 500 pages of this book got to be so slow and just take forever to get to the damn point? I think with this is Sanderson's reached that Stephen King level with his editor and his publisher. You're making us millions. We'll leave in whatever you want. Just keep writing. Just keep writing. We'll just publish it no matter what you make. I think that this story could have been told in 800 pages and been just as effective and probably better because a guy can't write consistently well with his pacing when he wants to because he seems to. It's a formula that works for him. Don't get me wrong. He's really, really good at it. But he rewards his readers for sticking with him where I wish you could just keep everyone along for the ride the whole way, because I swear, if I've got to hear comments one more time about, I don't know about this book you recommended, does it get better? It's really, really boring, you know? And I gotta tell them, like when they're reading Way of Kings, yeah, it's worth it. It's very slow. It's worth it. We're in book 5 here. I don't need 500 pages of setup, and I felt like this book really did do that. The first half is really, really going to test your patience. I'll tell you that's worth it, like it usually is, but it also makes me think, you're kind of like an ant. It's, taking a long time to say anything if it's worth saying at all. That's kind of what it feels like right now. And I just feel like it could have been sped up a little bit. And for God's sakes, can we spend less time in other realms, please? I love that he expands his world by showing us these other realms of existence. It's cool. It adds to things. It's very much ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕣𝕔𝕙𝕤 on steroids. I like that. He's given us multiple realms, and they serve different purposes, and there's a lot to be shown there. It's really cool about the way that it can show past events, and our characters can kind of relive those past events. I do like that. I want to spend more time in the now, in Roshar. I want to spend more. There's some big shit going on in 10 days. Can we get back to what's going on the real world? That's kind of how I felt with this. Just too much time in alternate realms in books 3, 4, and now 5. I love that he continues to expand his world. I know it sounds like I've got one foot in, one foot out, trying to have my cake, eat it too, and all those things. I do love cake. But the deal is, I want to spend more time in the real world. That's just kind of where I'm at. A big, big complaint. It's like, okay, I get it, man. Can we have our characters out of these realms now and get back to what's actually going on? Now, play is a big part of the plot, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that, but I want less time there. I do feel like maybe this moment kind of happened already. We kind of had that Avengers Assemble moment in Oathbringer, the ending of Oathbringer, to this. Now that I finished the first arc, I say that was the high point of the series for me. That was like, if you're wanting like the all of Doctor Strange's little loopholes are opening up and everyone's coming through your portals. Not loopholes, but you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. You want that moment. It's the end of Oathbringer. That's really the Avengers Assemble moment. Don't really have it here, you know? And I guess it might feel redundant or kind of like Wheel of Time, where it seemed like all the characters split up and then they all come together for the third act. And it might feel like tired or repetitive or redundant. I don't know if this is the end of that first arc. It almost feels like Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and you've got Han, Luke, and Leia back together. You don't let them have a scene together. That's what it kind of feels like. I was kind of wanting all my characters to kind of come back together, have that full circle moment, you know, from Way of Kings. I don't feel like we really got it here. And that was kind of a bummer. That's a personal thing for me. It's not a problem. The story doesn't really suffer because of it. It's just something I was hoping to see. So if you're wanting that big moment, I'm not sure you're going to get it, at least not in that regard. The book has tons of big moments. It's just if you're wanting that one, I don't think you're going to get it. Main characters are apart for most of the book, and that was a bummer. I feel like that's more of a middle book thing where you split all your heroes up and then you kind of have them come back together for the conclusion. I don't feel like we really had that too much here. And, you know, we did see some reunions, and everybody was doing something. There was no one that was just kind of standing around going, I don't know what to do with this character, so the author just put me here. I never feel like you really have that. They have a purpose for being where they are. It's kind of wanted more unity a little bit. But I will say, my favorite character, Dalinar, the Blackthorn, he's important in this, but man, he's just not present nearly enough. You know, this guy dominated the page count for the first 3 books, and he became one of my favorite characters in all of fantasy. Now Adolf's passed him because he's just not doing anything. He's doing important things. I say it's wrong to say he's not doing anything. He's doing important things. I'm just not seeing it enough. I want to see my character. I want to see him doing things. I want to hear him talking. I want to hear his thoughts. I want to know what he's doing. I want to see him just messing shit up. You know, and I just don't feel like we got that out of Dalinar in this book, or definitely the last one. So he's just, his page count has severely reduced. And again, if you're setting up for this new generation, I get it. But if this was really like the last book where I'm going to get all my legacy characters, I'd like to see him shine a little bit more and a little less setup. So that is kind of a big gripe for me. I felt like it was a satisfying conclusion, you know, but I feel like it's not really set up the next arc of characters for me really giving a damn about a lot of what's going to be the central plot in arc number 2. And I'll touch on that more in my final thoughts here. But why should you read it, guys? With this, I think this does make up for the mishap. And yes, I'm calling it a mishap. The mishap that was Rhythm of War for me, I feel like this kind of does make up for it. So if that's something you are apprehensive about, I understand. But fear not. I feel like this is much more in line with the first 3 than it was with Rhythm of War. I think a big reason is because he got back on track with character arcs and less time in science class. You know, something he was really big on in book 4, and giving us flashbacks of a character a lot of people were indifferent to. Like this, we get the flashback character about character we're interested in. We want to know more about them, you know. But also focusing on finishing up some of these character arcs. Character like Kaladin has a pretty good conclusion to his character arc of this first 5 books here. But if you enjoyed the series up to Rhythm of War, you're kind of, like I said, apprehensive about this one, yeah, fear not. I think this will be worth your time. This does feel like it can be a leaping off point. You know, if you're like me and you say you don't know your plans for the series after this book, look, it's cliffhanger-y. Yes, it's cliffhanger-y for the Cosmere as a whole. But I feel like if you're ready to say, okay, I have enjoyed my time with the Stormlight Archive, you can probably hop off here. It might not give you the Disney ending that you're looking for, you know, but I think it's enough that where you can say, okay, well, you know, I've really enjoyed my time. I don't know if I want to wait, you know, 8-9 years before the next Stormlight Archive book and reading all these other things. So I think it's a better point to walk away from the series than it would have been if you planned to walk away after Rhythm of War because you're upset. This is better than Rhythm of War. It is better than Rhythm of War, and I'll rank them at the end of this video. But yeah, if you want to kind of exit stage left at this book, it's a much more satisfying point to do it at, I think, than Rhythm of War was. But as for my final thoughts, I said that prior to this release, this was likely going to be my exit point for the Stormlight Archive. It was one of those days where I just said, I have plenty of series I've been waiting to be finished forever. I don't need another one that's probably not going to finish before I pass away. I mean, I don't think I'm super old, but you know, if he's talking about 8 years before the next book and he's taking 3 or 4 years before this, I'm doing the math and saying, I don't know if I'm going to be reading this when I'm 90, you know? So there was more of that. But this is kind of what I suspected, guys. When I jumped off of the MCU, it was around Endgame because I knew that the best had happened and it was only going to be downhill from there. And you know what? Here we are these years later after I said that, I was right. I think even the biggest MCU defender will say, yeah, it's not the same as it was. It definitely feels a little watered down compared to where it was. And I feel like this is headed that way. And it's headed that way in that the MCU did but you've got to watch all the Disney Plus TV shows to understand what's going on in the main MCU. And that was just too much for some people. I feel like that's kind of where this is headed. Because Stormlight Archive has always kind of stood on its own. If you read those other worlds he has, Mistborn, Warbreaker, ℚ𝕦𝕤𝕣𝕠𝕜𝕠, all that, yeah, you get things in here that other people flies right over their head. But you never needed to read those series to understand. Going forward, it sounds like you're very much going to need to read Mistborn. You're going to very much need to read ℚ𝕚𝕤𝕤𝕠𝕜. You're going to need to read Warbreaker, those sequels to ℚ𝕚𝕤𝕤𝕠𝕜 and Warbreaker and Mistborn. Look, I wasn't crazy about Mistborn Era 2. Love Era 1. Mistborn Era 2, kind of not really for me. And Era 3, really, that's the direction we're going. And then you've got, I have no interest in Return to the World of ℚ𝕚𝕤𝕠𝕠. Once was enough. I don't really need sequels there. And Warbreaker, my favorite characters from Warbreaker are in the Stormlight Archive now. So I don't know that I want to read all those other series to understand what's going on in Stormlight Archive. So that's a big reason why I'm like, I think I'm going to step away. Now look, I want to make this clear. Sanderson has earned the right to do this. He's very successful. His fandom is massive and they're loyal, and he has earned that. He has worked his ass off, and he deserves to do what he wants to do with this universe. For me, I always liked having those things as like Easter eggs. I never wanted to be like, I've got to read every ℚ𝕦𝕤𝕠𝕜 book that comes out in order to understand what's going on in Stormlight Archive. I never wanted to do that. But the way this book ends, it's very clear. You're going to have to read Mistborn Era 3. You're going to have to read his ℚ𝕚𝕤𝕠𝕜 sequels. Then you might understand what's going on in Stormlight Archive number 6. So I don't know. He's a good enough writer that maybe he can find a way to kind of recap it if you don't want to do that. But that just, it's, yeah, to me, it sounds like feels like the MCU, where I said, I feel like it's where you're hanging out at a party too long and everyone you want to hang out with has already went home. That's kind of what it's going to feel like for me, I think, in the second arc of Stormlight Archive. So ℚ𝕚𝕤𝕠𝕜's just getting a little bit too much of homework, where it feels like. Now, I still love the author. I'm still going to read his books. I'll give Era 3 of Mistborn a try. I don't know if I'll be returning for Stormlight 6, but I never say never, obviously. But it isn't really necessarily that this book is bad. Look, I think 4 out of the 5 books are pretty good. Some of them are some of my favorite books ever. You know, Way of Kings and Words of Radiance are S-tier books. I love them. And he's got some of my favorite characters ever. These characters he's set up to kind of take the reins, not really interested in. And I don't feel like, they're being honest, I don't feel like they're kind of written for my demographic anymore. It's starting to feel like it's turning into a YA series. And I just don't know if that's a road that I want to follow. So I don't know if, you know, books 1 and 2 were just something so special. They set the bar so high that I have super high expectations now, or what. This doesn't feel like it can reach those heights again. And maybe that's me. Maybe I've just changed. But yeah, it just feels like this is just MCU Phase 4 now. And I think if you can go to Wikipedia and look up MCU Phase 4 and look at those movies and tell me, besides Spider-Man, which one was like super, super awesome and memorable. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Hope to be wrong. But that's how I feel right now. And look, I'm not trying to be a wet blanket. And if you guys are still loving it, Sandersonians, I love you. I think you guys are super, super nice people. And I want you to keep on enjoying this world if you do want to. But for someone like me that's not ready to commit to reading every single ℚ𝕦𝕤𝕠𝕜 book on publication day, you know, just to keep up with Stormlight Archive, it feels like a good launching point a good exit point to jump off that launch pad and say thanks for the memories, Brandon. So my ranking here, I'm going to go number 1, Words of Radiance, number 2, Way of Kings, number 3, Oathbringer, number 4, Wind and Truth, and number 87, Rhythm of 4. If you wanted to kind of throw Warbreaker in there as like a 0.5 book, I'd probably put it as my 3rd favorite in the series. Warbreaker is still really, really good, and I hope you guys have read that one. So guys, that was Wind and Truth, mixed to positive, I would say. But yeah, I think it's one of those where you're going to have conflicting opinions about where the series does go from here. And I hope it's everything that you guys are hoping for it to be. And I hope you did enjoy it. So drop the comments, guys. Let me know what you thought about it. And I will talk to you there.